I'm especially excited today to have Kristy Traylor here from the Science Center to actually talk about team building and culture. One of the hardest things for entrepreneurs is building a team. And I'm sure any entrepreneur can attest to that as you move forward. You know, when do you hire? Who do you hire? What do you hire first? We all go through those points of as aspiration where we're building our team. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Kristy. And let's get ready for a great session.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm excited to be talking about the thing that you think might be one of the hardest. That's always good to know that I got that assignment. I will tell you that I'll give you a little bit of introduction to myself, but today my goal is to share my thoughts and experiences and let that be a jumping off point for this discussion, for us to learn from one another, for us to be able to, I'm interested in you all driving the conversation. I was joking earlier that I had 90 minutes of, you know, my extemporaneous speech, which is not true. I am putting out some thoughts and ideas, and I really do want to hear from all of you. And so please, I will stop and, you know, ask for questions and interaction and things like that. But if you have questions, comments, things that you want to jump in, I am not adverse for you to say, hey, I have this question that I want to talk about right now, or this story that I want to talk about right now. Because I think that that's what makes this rich. I have some experience that I'm happy to share, but I know you all do too. And so that's what I'm looking forward to today. And I want to say thank you for letting me join you, for being with me, for all of us being together. Wherever you are, hopefully you're staying semi-cool. It is pretty warm out there. And so hopefully you can all join from a place that's relatively comfortable so that you can settle in and get excited about establishing a team and a culture. It is something I get excited about. I can geek out about this. I know that about myself, so I will try to rein that in. But I'm sure some enthusiasm will pour out because I genuinely think this is really important. And so I will tell you just a little bit about my background so you have a sense of what I've done and where I've come from, and then we'll jump right in. So I've been in what you would consider human resources pretty much since middle of college for me. So I started in a very traditional HR assistant kind of role where I was doing files and taking attendance and all of those kinds of things. And then I, throughout my career, moved into different areas of HR. And so I started in a manufacturing organization, moved to a national mortgage and bank company right at the height of the mortgage boom. And so I was working with these tiny little joint ventures all around the United States that would pop up between our mortgage company and another bank, point of sale kind of thing, because everybody wanted loans and everybody was giving loans and everybody was getting loans. And so I was working with little tiny joint ventures that were between 2 and 10 people. And they weren't hiring HR people. So I was part of the mortgage company and I was bringing my HR experience to help them. We also had a professional employer organization, if you're familiar with those, behind me to do the things like payroll and benefits. But I was working very closely with these tiny little organizations that were popping up all over. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., and I worked with an international nonprofit for several years, worked in domestic HR, stuff you would think of with HR, benefits, payroll, employee relations, performance management, and then into our learning and organizational development function, and then into the global staff care. So I was director of global staff care. We had several offices around the world, and then moving into what you would consider probably talent retention and development. We called it staff care. And then I moved here to the Science Center, and I've been with the Science Center since 2017, since November of 2017, unbelievably. We are coming up on 4 years, which I can't believe it, but here we are. So that's a little bit about me so that you understand kind of where my experience has been in terms of establishing teams and working with teams and talking about culture. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And you all can let me know if that is working for you. Can you see it? Great. Okay. So I want to start, as we're talking about team and culture, you know, Tanya started talking about recruiting and how do you build this team and how do you build a team that's great. And I want to pose that I think it is never too early to consider your culture, your mission, your vision, and your values, because all of that is what establishes a framework to decide, for people to decide whether they want to join you. And maybe that's a full-time employee, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a contractor, maybe it's an investor, maybe it's just somebody who's going to help you with something for just a month because you have a gap in this and a need. But if you establish who you are and what you want to bring to the world, people will know what you're asking them to join. And so that's going to be very important. And so while some of you may think, I am not at the spot where I'm ready to think about establishing these things, a culture, a mission, a vision, values, I'm assuming that there are people thinking that, maybe not, but I would say, I really think that it's never too early. And so I think it matters at all phases of your business to be considering these things, because this is how you make sure that you know what to say yes and no to, who to say yes and no to, and how to keep yourself focused. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of these things today. I'm going to pause for us to talk about some of this, for you to ask questions, for us to think about some of this together. Okay. So let's start. What is an organizational culture? You know, the title of this is Establishing Your Optimal Team and Culture. And all of us have some understanding of the word culture, right? We live in a culture. We live in a global culture. We live in a national culture. We live in a culture that's by state or neighborhood or town or family, and all kinds of cultures in between those boundaries and lines. So we have an idea of what a culture is. But what is an organizational culture? How would you define that? And I'm going to pull from two different sources that I think share kind of two different vantage points on what a culture is, to help us get to an idea of what we're talking about today. And so a culture from SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, for those of you who don't just say SHRM all the time like I do, says that a culture is based on a strongly held and widely shared set of beliefs that are supported by strategy and structure. And when an organization has a strong culture, three things happen, according to this SHRM article. Employees know how top management wants them to respond to any situation. Employees believe that the expected response is the proper one, and employees know they'll be rewarded for demonstrating the organization's values. Now, again, that may all seem really far down the road, but the other thing that I think is important is this HBR article, Harvard Business Review, that says, while there's universal agreement that organizational culture exists, and then it plays a crucial role in shaping behavior in organizations, there's little consensus on what organizational culture actually is, never mind how it influences behavior and whether it's something leaders can change. And so I think that's important to call out, because it can be difficult to define culture, and it takes intentionality to create what you want, right? And so I think one of the things I also want to say is that a lot of you are probably at a spot where you're focusing on things like, product or idea, and you're not thinking necessarily about the things that I think help you get to where you define culture. And that I'm going to spend some time on mission, vision, and values. And for those of you who've worked with me recently at the Science Center, this is going to be like, really? Kristy's talking about mission, vision, values again? Yes, because I think it is very key to how you kind of what I would call your North Star, right? How you make sure you know you're going in the right direction, and how people joining you know that too, right? And how people joining you know that they want to stay with you, that they want to join you, and that you're all moving in the same direction. And so I think this is just, I want to spend a little bit of time on this, not all of our time today, because I think it's foundational to have some thoughts around this as you're thinking about building your team. Does that make sense before we move on? Are we good? Okay. So, I was saying earlier in the last slide that there is this question mark sometimes around what's an organizational culture. And it's very interesting because the last organization where I worked, almost always when visitors would walk in the door, they'd say, you have such a strong culture. And no one could ever say what that was, but everyone could say what the mission of the organization was, what the vision was, and what our values were. And I think all of that contributes. And so, first of all, we don't have time to have a masterclass on mission, vision, and values today. It takes a long time to establish them. And I also know that some of you may not be in that spot. But what I want to plant today here is just some ideas about each of those things so you can be thinking about some of this that I think is going to be really important as you establish your team. So what are they? Defining what you want to achieve is your vision and your mission, and defining who you want to be as you're achieving it as your values. Okay. No, I say this a lot. No organization exists to make all their employees happy. The organization, the business that you are working on, the idea that you're working towards, you're not doing it just so that you can bring people on board to make them happy. What you're doing is that you have something that you want to put out into the world, right? A problem you want to solve, a product you want to bring, a group of people you want to reach. There's something that you have that you want to share with the world. And so what you want to achieve needs to be defined. And so similarly, what I would say is a culture will happen whether you mean for it to happen or not, right? And so this is the way that you can start defining that, and you can start putting stuff down on paper to say, this is what I want the world to think of me as. This is what I want my community to think of me as. This is what I want my investors. This is what I want when I'm attracting people to my team. This is what I want them to know we are putting out into the world. So a vision is something that is like, in some years' time, this is who you want to be. It tends to be long, right? Longevity. It also is meant to be a pretty external sharing. So maybe you're sharing it in a funding proposal. Maybe you're sharing it in a time that you're, recruiting people, whatever that is. Short and concise. And it doesn't say how you do business or who you are. So I've taken an example here that we actually used at the Science Center at one point when we were doing this exercise of Walt Disney, which is to bring smiles to people in every way possible, everywhere possible, every place in the world in an unexpected way that affects the everyday. There's nothing in that says what Walt Disney does in terms of their business model. It just says this thing that it wants to create in the world. And that's what a vision is, right? The mission is more like, okay, so what are we doing? What's the business we're in? And how do we deliver this thing to the world? And so what the business organization is in now and in the future, and it provides focus for management and staff and helps set strategy. This is where it's important to say these things so that as you're going out into the world to build your team, you are creating something that people know what they're joining. And so in this case, Walt Disney, they say to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world's premier entertainment company. Well, now in this mission, before it was talking about, we want to bring smiles to the world. And here's how, right? Through entertainment, through storytelling, right? These are the things where you start to recognize this is the business they're in. Does that make sense?
Kristy.
Yes.
This is Tanya. Quick question, because I think a lot of times founders get stuck on the difference between the vision and the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an interesting example that you put, Walt Disney, and I put a question just in general, not looking for anybody to respond, in the chat as far as their vision about the smiles and all of that. And then the mission really being how they do what they do. Can you kind of talk for a minute about and how we can really, especially as entrepreneurs, really understand the difference between those two, the vision and the mission?
Yes. And I'm really glad you brought that up, Tanya, because a lot of times people will use those words interchangeably too, right? They'll just be like, this is our mission or this is our vision. And what they're essentially saying is, this is what we're trying to put out into the world, right? And so a lot of times the big difference is that a vision is something that can go for a very long time. It's not that specific, right? It's an idea. It's almost like the external impact you're trying to make. So this idea from Walt Disney is like, we want to put smiles out into the world. There's a lot of ways you can put smiles out into the world. You could do that with good food. You could do that with, some product, right? So then the mission boils down to, well, how are we, in this case, at Walt Disney doing that? If we know that the thing we want to put in the world is the smiles, what's our power to do that? And so that's kind of the difference between a mission and a vision, right? A vision is saying, this is the way we want the world to be different because of us. And then the mission is, this is the way we're going to do that because this is the expertise we can bring. Does that make sense? Do other people have thoughts on that? Because there's a lot out there around mission and vision. So I'm also interested in if there's other ways people would describe that. I can't really see the chat because I'm screen sharing.
So I think you really summed it up. If anybody else want to add, I mean, I often say that the vision is the big picture and mission is how we fulfill the big picture, how we navigate and get to the big picture. So I think the way that you summed it up was great.
Great. The other thing I want to say is it can be tricky to do. There's organizations who've been around for a very long time that struggle with this, right? And as organizations, we go through iterations of this, right? Where you restate your mission and vision, or you look at it again to make sure. And in every organization I've been through some exercise where we restate or we look at it again and we make sure, first of all, is this still who we are? And is this still what we want to be? And second, are we moving towards that? And how are we sure we're moving towards that, right? And so I think that all of this, again, while it seems potentially like this is maybe just for bigger organizations, I disagree. I think this is something that you set early so that people know what you're selling and why they should join. And I do want to take a minute for you all to think about some of this because I have been talking for a while. And I want to take a pause for a second first to see if you have questions, thoughts, and then I want to take a few minutes for all of you to be able to just jot some notes. So before we get to that point, are there any thoughts, questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or unmute. I'll see if I can share my unnavigate. Here we go. Okay, so what I'd like to do is take a few minutes for each of you to just jot some notes and ideas that are coming to you, to your mind around what your vision and mission is. Maybe, and you all may be in very different parts of the journey. And so this does not have to be, and it won't be, a full mission and vision exercise. It takes hours, days, weeks, months to put all that together, to refine it, to get everyone to agree on it. I'm just interested in you taking a few minutes to work those muscles. And maybe your notes are just, I've never thought about this. I need to think about it. Or maybe it's, here's what I think I could bring to the world, or questions that you have. So I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes and I'm going to give you, let's see, what time is it? I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to share with yourself first what you want, right? Write it down. And then if there's anything you would like to share out, I'll call time in a few minutes and see if there's anything people would like to share. Okay. So I saw Talia put some thoughts in the chat. Everybody's been hearing my voice for a while. Talia, do you want to unmute and read what you wrote?
Sure, I can. So my startup is called Feminist Squad, and our vision is we want to change the gender gap for women in STEM careers. And our mission would be that we are going to bridge the communication between academia, industry, and female students.
Excellent. Thank you. So, that idea of the thing that is being put out into the world is changing the gender gap for women in STEM, and how? Bridging the communication between these areas, right? You could even talk about how you want to bridge the communication, but you don't want it to be, like 3 paragraphs long for a mission, but that is another step you could go down. Other thoughts that people had, anything else that they would want to share? Thank you, Talia, for sharing.
Sure, I'll share.
Great, go for it, Bruce.
So for a vision, I wrote, our mission is to help everyone explore and better understand our world through hands-on science. And the mission is to produce affordable, quality scientific tools for the amateur scientists and hobbyists.
Great. So could you read that vision one more time?
Sure. So our mission is to help everyone explore and better understand our world through hands-on science. All this needs, I'm sure, some
of course
better wordsmithing and refinement, but this is the first time I've ever worked on it. So
I love it. And I appreciate that you're being brave to share it, because I promise that, I can't even tell you how many iterations visions go through. So in no way am I trying to, say like, well, this should be completely 100% thought out. But I love that you're putting thought towards what it is that you're putting in the world, and then how you want to do that. So then Kenny.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you for sharing. Kenny, would you like to share out loud?
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. So for pastoral organics, our mission is using plants to create innovative health and wellness solutions. And currently, our brand Ilari is an alternate dairy using a very beneficial plant called tiger nuts.
Great. So that is very specific. And so I love that your mission is about how you're using plants to create innovative health and wellness solutions, right? Like this is what we're going to do. In terms of your vision, right? Like sort of coming out a little further, is it, do you have a sense of what your vision is in terms of the thing that's not how you do, but like what's just sort of being put out there, what you're giving to the world, like better health or, that's very
yeah, so it's basically playing on like the better for you and better for the planet.
Great
vision. Yes.
Great. Love that. So better for you, better for the planet. Excellent. Tracy made a comment that I want to acknowledge, which is this is very hard to do as a solo exercise. We've spent in organizations where I am, it is a team that does this, but I do think that if it's just you, or if it's just you and a co-founder or whatever, it makes sense to be spending some time on this now, because the whole point is that as you go into the world to build your team, you want to know what you're asking people to join, and they want to know what they're joining. And it provides this North Star to make sure you're saying yes and no to the things that are actually central to what you want to do and the people that can help you get there. And so I think someone else put something in the chat. Sister's Original Supreme Pie is so good, you ain't gonna want to share. I like that. Lauren, I'm sorry, I read yours out loud. I should have let you read yours out loud. Anything else you'd like to add?
A minute. Okay. All right. So I'm going to add to that. After eating our pies, it creates happiness, excitement, and joy.
Nice. So potentially your vision, right, is around bringing happiness and joy, and the how is through your pies. And you have a great tagline there.
Thank
So
you.
good, so good you ain't gonna want to share. I like that. I like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for sharing this and for engaging in it. Is there anyone else that wants to share before we move on to the next thing? I don't want to cut anyone off. Awesome. Someone else just shared. Tanya, is that you that just shared?
Yep. I'm
Awesome.
gonna get on this and then on this too.
I like it. You want to read yours out loud?
To help mompreneurs, Black and brown female entrepreneurs turn obstacles into opportunities is the vision. And we do that by being the premier business accelerator for Black and brown female entrepreneurs to help them achieve exponential business growth by connecting them with resources and opportunities through education, mentoring, and access to capital.
I love that. I love it. So the very short, sort of pithy thing that you're adding into the world, or that you're putting out to people externally, is helping mompreneurs, Black and brown female entrepreneurs, turn obstacles into opportunities. Again, lots of ways you can do that. And then you explain how. This is how our mission, this is what we can bring. This is how we can do that. I love that. Somebody is driving right now. I love, okay. So to be safe, does that person, I think is it Jonna? Is that right? Yeah. So I don't want to cause any unsafeness. So I'll give a second to see if you want to speak. And if not, I will be happy to read it. So if it stays silent, I'll read.
You can read it for me.
Okay, great. So the vision, I want artists to be able to focus on creating their best work without worrying about the sales. And then the mission, to make buying and selling art fun, easy, and affordable for the artist and art lover. Great. So I actually think that you can even go a little further in your mission, right? How are you going to make buying and selling art fun, easy, and affordable, right? Because I totally am with you on your vision on the vision is artists get to do their best work without worrying about some of those details, right? And so how do you help them do that? How do you help them make buying and selling art fun, easy, and affordable? You all are very good at this. Go ahead.
So that would be through gamification and integrated marketing.
Great.
But that just sounds very wordy. But thank you.
So you've run into something that I think probably every organization that does this runs into, which is how to not be too wordy or how to not use too many buzzwords. Like all of this is very normal. And so I think that just to sort of encourage all of you that, again, we're not going to be able to spend, we're not gonna be able to get everyone to like the exact thing they want to print out on, 900 business cards, but even just taking the time to think through that and the exercise to put this down, now you have something that you can go back to and keep refining and talking to your team about, talking to trusted partners about, right? Because a lot of times letting someone else's voice is also helpful. All right. So am I missing, is there one other? I think there was one other above this or down below it. Okay. And I want to make sure I pronounce your name properly. Is it Nefertari?
Yes, it is.
Nefertari. Oh, that's Nefertari.
What's that?
We're the Nefs. She's Nefertari, I'm Nefertiri.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then would you like to use your voice to say what you wrote instead of me using mine?
Yes, I am looking at what I put into the chat. So the mission, to support educators navigate the future of education. I did not put the how, but the vision, because Pennsylvania industry deserves a world-class Pennsylvania educated workforce. Okay.
So I think just with a little bit of wordsmithing, right? The vision is bringing Pennsylvania industry, a world-class, I can't even say it. Bringing Pennsylvania industry, a world-class Pennsylvania educated workforce. That's what you want to do. How? By supporting educators navigate the future of education, and maybe with a little bit more how, right? That's great. So I'm going to move on to the next thing, but what I want to, first of all, again, say thank you. And you're all very good at this for such a for me just dropping this on your plate and to be doing this solo and in, after me talking for 10 minutes. I think you're doing an excellent job. There are organizations that spend days and weeks and don't get this far. So well done. And the idea of this exercise, again, is to help you start verbalizing or scribing what it is that you are asking people to be a part of, because that's how you build the team, right? And so people know what to join. So now I want to talk a little bit about, well, let's see if I can. Okay, values. So we talked a little bit about mission and vision, obviously. And so the other V in the MVV thing acronym that I use, because it's not, business without acronyms, is that our values. And so what is a value? Why is it important? And how do you define a value? So I put in this slide, you can see this question, what is cultural fit? Because I hear that phrase a lot, and I understand the value of that phrase, but I also think there's some pitfalls to that phrase. So when people say that when they're thinking of building a team, they're thinking of their cultural fit. If you haven't defined what your culture is, number one, that can be a very subjective measurement of what cultural fit is if you haven't defined that culture. Another thing is that somebody may say, well, that fits, and the other person may say, well, that doesn't fit. And so what I like to do when I'm thinking of cultural fit is just either pivot to or supplement with or tie it to values. Because what you're really talking about with cultural fit is how are the folks in the organization or on the team or in my core group bringing this to the world? How are we behaving? How are we agreeing is the best way to interact to do this? And will anybody else that we bring on board subscribe to that, adhere to that, right? And so that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about with values. So there are some definitions out there of what values are, and I think they can be really helpful. So an agreed upon code of conduct that guides you as you achieve your mission and vision. So who do you want to be as you do these things, right? And what is the code of conduct that you're agreeing to? What are the fundamental beliefs that you're agreeing to as an organization, as a business, as a team? And these tend to be internally focused. You're talking about how you want the people in your group to behave. Now, as much as they're internally focused, a lot of folks put them out there. They'll put them on their website. They'll put them in, proposals. They'll put them in all kinds of things because it adds context to your organization. It also is something, especially in recruiting, where people are interested in what's it like to work with all of you? What are you aspiring to when you're working together? And so this is a way a lot of times people share that with prospects and prospective, again, funders, team members, partners. This is how we as an organization want to be. So some words that you've probably heard before with values, things like integrity, things like, this is a buzzword, innovation, right? Or we're collaborative, or we're results driven, or we're results oriented, or we are united, or we are committed to equity or inclusivity, right? Like these are all the kinds of words that often you hear around values, because it says that as we are doing the things we're doing, right? As we are, bridging these communication gaps, as we are providing these resources to people, this is who we are. And this is how we are going to behave when we do our work, right? So this is a kind of an old article. It's 3 years old, but I think it's a really good one. And so it's an HBR article. All you had to do is Google how to establish values on a small team, because the assumption here is that these are small teams, right? And I think there's some really good principles about how do you do that when you're small, because every organization should do it. And we actually very recently went through an exercise at our organization where we took values that we already had and that people were sort of raising their hand and saying, A, I don't know that everybody can tell us what the values are, and B, not sure that they are who we, like the most important things about who we want to be, right? So I think this article is really good about helping folks think about, yes, I can put the link in the chat, think about how to establish these values. So let me go through this in a minute, and then I will definitely put the link in the chat. Well, let me do that first. But now I'm gonna have to navigate through screens. Let's see if I can.
I did it, Kristy.
Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. As much as I would love to pride myself on being able to navigate all this, I will take the help. So thank you. So something that's really important that gosh, I realize there's a lot of content here. So if you hear one thing is try to do all of this as early as possible, right? And so setting your values, defining those core values as early as possible is really key, because again, there's going to be behaviors that show up. There's going to be a culture that happens. So if you can be intentional about that, even if it's just you, even if you're the only one right now, what are the values? Because you are going to ask other people to join you, and you want to know what your values are and what you want other people to feel as important also when they join you, right? So defining these core values as early as possible is really important. Developing them as a team, as an organization. If it is just you, maybe there are a couple people who were foundational to you, starting this off and could help you think about some things. If it's just you and a co-founder, if it's you and one or two other people, I realize that all of you are potentially in different phases and have a different group that's a team or a business or organization. But for all of you that are involved, core involved, right? People who are like helping you deliver the service or the product, coming up with these together is really important. Another thing that's really important is allowing people to contribute and reflect. And this can take some time. We went through several iterations in our organization. We had like an all staff meeting where we were gaining a lot of insights into what people thought about our current values, what people wanted to be, what they think what we've said we are in other spaces, right? Like, oh, this is important to us. And then we actually have a culture team at the Science Center, and we spent a lot of time just sort of poring over the values and the words. And it was a long process, and it doesn't have to be, weeks long or months long, but it was intended to give the space for people to think about it and breathe and contribute. Sometimes you'll get a long list, so you want a short list, right? We can't be all things to all people. If you have 15 values, it starts to lose some of its potency, because then are those really the most important things to you? So there's no magic number. Most of the time I see somewhere between 4 and 8, right? Of people's, and often hovering around 5 or 6 core values, right? And then interpreting them and infusing them. So I'll spend a very little bit of time on that, and then we'll jump to another exercise here. Words can mean different things to different people. So often what's important is adding some interpretation. So if you say your values are, and I'm going to put some buzzwords in here on purpose. If you say your values are collaboration, integrity, and innovation, those could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so spending some time saying, this is what we mean as an organization by collaboration, right? That everyone gets to contribute. Maybe that's not what you mean. Maybe what you mean is that you seek out expertise from others, right? So see the difference between those two things in collaboration. Saying everyone gets to contribute is a version of collaboration. Saying seeking out expertise from others is a version of collaboration. Those are different. And so being able to not just say, these are the values I want, but a little bit about how that actually plays out in your organization is really important, because you could get a lot of ambiguity and create confusion. So you don't want to make, again, this is not a master class in this, but I think that's important to pay attention to, because words, everybody brings to these words their experience, their lens, and their history. So interpret them a little bit for people. And then the hardest part, after you write them, you have to infuse them. And we're going to talk about recruiting in a little bit, because that's going to be a very important way that you infuse them. But it can be an exercise where you write a bunch of things and then you walk away from them and you forget about them. You don't actually use them as a North Star. So infusing them into your organization, saying them at the start of meetings, sharing them when you go to recruiting, which we'll talk about in a minute, talking to them when you're figuring out, what's our goals for the year. And you think like and let's remember, this is how we want to behave as we go to these goals, right? So to the point where everyone in that core team can recite them quickly. Does that make sense? What thoughts or questions do you have about values before we move into the next exercise there? Because I'm going to ask you to define some, and I'm also going to ask you, I'm going to do sort of a two-parter here, what challenges you found and what successes you found in setting them. So I'd like to do the next exercise in breakout rooms. Is that okay? Is that something that everybody's comfortable with? Tanya, you can give me the yes or no if that's an okay thing to do. Okay, great. So first, let me set this out, and then I will also copy it into the chat, because I think once you go into the breakout rooms, you probably not gonna be able to see the screen, right? So I'm gonna ask you in small groups, and I can look and see here. I think I'll probably put about 3 people to a group, thinking about how you would define your current cultural values, whether they are stated or unstated, formal or informal at this point. I'm not asking, do you have a full value statement? Just start thinking out loud about what that is and what drives those. And then we're going to move into, what do you want them to be? And what challenges have you found and what successes have you experienced? So we're going to start with, what would you say it is right now? What are your values, whether they are stated or unstated? And if it's just you, think about, this is probably the way I behave, and this is what's important to me, and this is the way I present. Again, we're not looking at perfection here. I'm just trying to sort of like get these juices flowing. Think about what drives it. Is it a past experience where you have had a very negative experience, and so you want your values to be the opposite of that? Is it that you've seen something be really successful in another organization and you want to adopt that? Is it that you've experienced success somewhere? Think of what is it that's driving that, because a lot of times that helps us define what we want to be. Any questions about the exercise before I move us to breakout rooms? So we're going to stop sharing for the moment. Like I said, I'll put all of that back in the chat when we get a chance. So I'm going to randomly assign you to breakout rooms. Let's see. Now I'm going to create 4 of them. Okay. That creates 3 participants per room. I'm going to give you, let's see, what time is it? I'm going to give you about, let's say, a little bit less than 10 minutes for this first exercise, and then we'll bring everyone back together. Okay. See you all soon. Angela, feel free to, did it put you in one or did it not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I didn't get a notification.
That's okay. I don't think it puts the hosts in. And I was hoping that that's what happened.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't be in a room anyway. So
right.
That's good.
Right. I was actually debating whether I should even put Tanya in a room, but I went with
I think it's good. She has a lot to talk about. So,
Right.
but does Chrissy want to join it? Maybe she just didn't see the notice yet.
maybe.
This is going really great.
Thanks. Can't tell.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I think the reason people are kind of quiet is because you're asking really challenging questions, which is great. So,
Sorry, I can.
oh,
I
it's
can.
good. They're thinking.
Yeah. Hopefully it's helpful. 'Cause I mean, they're doing excellent, quite frankly, for what I'm asking of them.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you're good at breakout rooms. I always mess them up, but I guess when we do the recording, I'll edit this out. So
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No,
I
no,
should
it's
have
fine.
given you the heads up. Because you can also stop and start the recording, because I did that with Tracy
Oh yeah.
when we were doing oh, I have a chat. Let's make sure it's not somebody asking a question. Got it. It looks like maybe Chrissy is. Hi, Chrissy. Do you have a message to join a breakout room?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, it kicked me out, so here I am.
Oh, it kicked you out.
Yeah, it shut down the whole Zoom, so I had to sign back in.
Oh, weird.
Well, I'm going to assign you to a room, Chrissy, so that you can participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for telling me.
Mhm.
Could you please?
Yeah, it seems like it's given her technical difficulties when that happened. Because when I'm looking at the rooms, I can see a couple. There's 2 and 1, 3 and 2, 3 and 4, and I put her in 3, and there's 2, and it says her not joined, but she's clearly not right here either.
Yeah, that's very strange. Huh.
Poor lady. Well, Chrissy, if you would like to just do this exercise, she's probably gonna have to come right back in.
Yeah. That's strange.
Yeah. Is there anything you suggest I do differently? I'm happy to
No, I think this is great. I think we did a breakout room exercise on the first one, and I think when people came back, they had a lot to share. So I think it's a great way to have people get to know each other in a virtual cohort.
Yeah.
Which this wasn't intended to be, and I think we will go back in person in the next 2 weeks. But for now, it's a nice way to meet each other.
Yeah. When did you said 5 weeks ago? So this started end of July?
End of July. I know, I guess the first week of August we were in person, and then after that we shut down for the entire month of August. So we're going back on the 9th.
Got it. And you know what I didn't do a good job of is knowing what time I sent people out to breakout rooms.
Oh. You said 5 minutes, right?
10.
I think if you close it down in 2 minutes, you're probably good.
I'll give people, let's do this. Let's split the difference. In 1 minute, I'll give people a 2-minute warning.
Okay.
And then they'll be like, you said 10 minutes. And I'm like, was it 4? Because I messed up. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, she's gone. We'll see if
She's also not in the room.
that's so strange. I hope it's not. It must be Zoom and not the Venture Cafe site. We've had a lot of issues.
I mean, everybody else seems to have just, so I have a feeling it's something between her technology and Zoom that is causing the problem. She clearly knows what she's doing, so it's clearly not user error. It's just something is glitching on her every time it tries to send her to a room. It's almost like your computer can't handle it.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to update your Zoom all of a sudden. I don't know.
I know, isn't that crazy? Ugh. All right, I will give the, oh wait, did someone just chat? No. Okay. Now I'm actually going to time myself.
That's good. Well, also when you bring them back, isn't there some kind of a 1 minute? Okay.
So when I say close rooms, they get 59 more seconds to talk.
Oh, okay. I made that mistake. I was like, we're coming back in 30 seconds. And then I pushed the button and it was like 1 minute. I don't know.
Oh, it's like that when you tell your child, I'm counting to 3.
Right.
I'm going to start counting. Are you ready for me to start counting?
Exactly.
Which parent among us has not had that experience?
Oh.
Because you're like, I can see that if I start counting now, I am going to have to issue the consequence. So I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. Oh.
So do you have a kid starting kindergarten? That's right. That's what I thought.
One starting middle school.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
But it's early middle school. They start him in 5th grade in my district.
Okay.
So at my district and their district, I didn't ever go to the school district. But so I have a 5th grader who's 10, who just turned 10, and a 5-year-old who's going into kindergarten.
And is kindergarten hybrid or
all day?
Okay, that's good, because friends of mine who did kindergarten virtually last year, their kids had a hard time like understanding what school was.
Yep. So she was in a pre-K program because of language development for a couple of years. So she's had a teacher literally at that school because she qualified for the pre-K. So she was in school for a while, which helped, because then when they pulled her out, she had some framework to like associate with the school. Because when kindergartners start, they don't have that. They hadn't been in the building. They don't know where the teacher, like, they don't know what the room looks like. They don't know what the teacher looks like. They don't know, so all of that, I'm gonna go ahead and hit close rooms. So all of that is very hard to place. Whereas she had the I guess advantage of having that first. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, because who knows where we'll be in a few months. Scary.
I'm not even convinced where we'll be after 1 week of school, right? You get an outbreak and then what? So I'm trying not to like panic about that.
Me too.
I'm looking at my work schedule for September. I'm like, I cannot handle any quarantine. My child needs to be in school. So
I was watching my friend's child today because his camp got closed down for quarantine. So yep.
Exactly. They're starting to come back. If no one comes back, I will know. They used it as their out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. How'd it go?
Great.
Good. All right. So I'm going to go back to this slide. Actually, I don't think I shared. I just opened the slide on my computer. How come you all can't see that? Hold on 1 minute. Now, can you see it? Okay. So I'm just going to leave this pretty open. So can you, I didn't tell you to like pick a person to report out or anything like that. So if you could all just share it, you don't have to, you can either share sort of what your team gravitated to. Maybe there were some values you thought were really important, or maybe just some ideas about values or what is driving your current values and culture. I'm happy to hear what it is that you all sort of congregated around.
I'm going to ask Kenny to share from our group.
Great. Kenny, can you share, please?
Yes. So I think we just had a really lovely breakout room session with Miss Tonya, and she just helped me, because when I was thinking of values, I kind of was coming from like what's important to me, and I wasn't necessarily thinking about like, okay, well, yeah, it does have to be like important to you personally, but you also have to think in terms of an organizational structure, what you're trying to, like, it ties back into your mission and your vision. And So the one value definitely that was innovation, which comes from directly pulls from the mission, like using innovative plants create innovative solutions for better for you, better for the planet, and transparency, making sure that whatever we are stating or any claims we are making is absolutely correct and we are not misleading anyone. Education, and it's one that like I absolutely wasn't even thinking about. I was talking loyalty, which personally for me, loyalty is important, but like from a company's perspective, education is going to be one of our main drivers because we're going to have to educate our audience and our consumer about the product and about what we are doing, our hero ingredient, which a lot of people are not familiar with. And in doing that also feeds back to the transparency, making sure we are not overstating claims and we're not blowing things out of proportion.
Awesome. You know what I loved about that, Kenny, is that you were also doing some of that interpretation. As you were saying the words, you didn't just say innovation, transparency, education. You said, and here's some more about that. And it was really well formed, especially for, you know, this sort of first pass. And so I think that's really great. And I love to hear that back and forth and that help you got from Tanya around, sure, that might be something that's personally important to you, but in an organization, how does that manifest? So
Yes.
think about that aspect. I love that.
Thank
you so much for sharing. Others that may want to share. And even if you didn't come up with values that you loved, what was the discussion that was fruitful or helpful?
Well, I'll volunteer to speak.
Great.
I was Nefertari and I were in the group together, and we were in extremely different I guess points in business and developing, because I'm just starting out and she's been at it for several years now. Which was interesting that, you know, I guess especially for me just starting out, I have some ideas from the past and things like that, and some areas of a well-defined sense of what I want the product to be and how it should interact with the world, and accordingly how we should interact with the world as a company.
Yeah.
But other things, I'm definitely, you know, I haven't certainly haven't put as much thought into.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But Nefertari is the company, on the other hand, has a very well-defined, or I guess a great origin and goals to begin with that really helped you know, drive I think helps drive out the values that she wants to put into it.
Well, I love
from experience.
I love that, Bruce, because I think, you know, sharing the difference, right, and where you are on the continuum, it also talks about, to me, the value. I'm going to use the word value to describe values. The payoff of being able to think about this now, because it's okay that you don't have this full stated, you know, one pager that you can glossy and hand out to folks, fine, right? But you get to do the work now of thinking about, oh, so early on, I get to think about how I want to define this. So I think that's great. And then I don't know if Nefertari, you wanted to add in anything else to that?
Yeah, I would like to and thank Bruce for this conversation, because I learned something different. I was telling him that Sisters Original Supreme Pies is a dual type of a business, whereas it's a family oriented business, whereas it allows me to bring my family together. I'm a single parent of 5 children, and they are my team. and we create, you know, in my family, it's all about love, and also uh, keeping that long-term relationship always positive. And that's the same thing that we would like to do with our business. Long-term relationship that creates friendship, that creates happiness, excitement, and joy.
Nice. I like that. I hear the words
Thank you.
long-term, joy. I love that.
And thanks, Bruce.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm not going to force anyone. Anybody else want to share? Okay. So I want to take a minute. So we talked a little bit about what you want your values to be. What challenges have you found? And what successes have you experienced in setting values? And it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, right? What are some of the challenges you found and what are some of the successes you've experienced? Can we share that here together as a group?
I can go.
Yes, please.
So what challenges have I faced? My main challenges, and this is just being brutally honest, has been all self-work, like how I deal with problems, time management, and trying to get a grasp of how to juggle life and completing these tasks. But not only that, but trust. It's very difficult for me to talk about my ideas openly, or to like, even down to me talking with developers now. I'm like, well, it does this, but it doesn't do, like, I'm not direct about much because I'm nervous that someone will try to, that's my biggest thing. It's like self-work. And I know that it won't go anywhere unless I break out of that and just, someone told me, what did they say? Basically, don't cradle my fancies, like don't try to like cuddle my ideas, like they're so precious. Don't make your ideas so precious that you can't make forward movement. But yeah, that's one of my challenges, is who can I divulge information to, even down to interviewing someone to bring someone on my team. It's like, are you really committed to this, like stuff like that? And what are my successes? I really enjoy seeing tangible progress. Like when I got my provisional patent and when I saw people signing up, like I like seeing that and learning to track that in a way. And just, yeah, that's the biggest success. And winning the idea competition, like I have these little highlights and goals, but until it's up and running, I feel like it's not what I see in my head yet. And then values, just to touch on that. In the conversations, you said creativity. Well, we came up with creativity, connection, and communication. And Kenny said, cool, that's 3 C's. So I'm like, well, maybe it's CCC at the bottom. Like, well, the 3 words, I don't know. But yeah.
So just a couple of thoughts. Thank you, Jonna, for sharing. I really appreciate it. Was very brave of you to talk about starts with yourself. All of you are the core of this thing that you're creating, right? Like you are the idea person, or this was your baby, right? For lack of a better word. And so I love that you're very aware that there's some self-work there, and that's some of the challenges in setting your values. Because as you're thinking about who do we want to be, you're thinking about, who do I want to be, right? And how do I want to present my work? And I was also thinking about, as you were sharing some of your successes, that also seems like something you value, right? Like if that's a success of yours and you feel like that's a success, then that's something you value, right? And so I think that even in going through that part of the exercise, you're helping to start to think about your values. Does anybody else have anything they want to add and to share with either sort of build on what Jonna said or respond to what Jonna said, thoughts that maybe you've had about your own kind of self-work? Any other challenges or successes?
Yes. For me, communication. I just want to make sure that I can convey my thoughts. And then also when it comes to the second one was the successes. The success for me, planning the plan and working the plan. And at the planning the plan and working the plan, it's like every day I write down things that I want to do and checking them off. At the end of the day, every day, I want to say it's 98% complete. That's the greatest success for me.
Got it. Awesome. You know, the idea of communication, I want to go back to for a minute, because this comes up a lot in values in an organization. Communication. And that's one of those things that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I would encourage you, as you're thinking about what it is that attracts you to that, think about defining that, because communication, gosh, in every organization where I've worked, it has come up. Like, we need better communication. What does that mean? And the bigger you get, the more important it is that you've defined it early. So I just want to highlight that. So thanks for sharing.
So
go ahead, Tanya.
Kristy, yeah, I just wanted to add something, because we're like in this little bit of a transition phase as far as a little bit of rebranding. We just finished our first strategic plan. So this comes at a really prevalent time for Mom Your Business. And just as we were talking in our breakout, and even in the group as a whole, you know, we had 3 things that I kind of thought just were like slogans, which evidently turned out to be our values, which was collaboration, education, and motivation. And I was telling them in the breakout that I really appreciate that you brought another explanation to collaboration, because when you think about it, it can mean different things to different people. And, you know, as being a service provider that provides, you know, that our mission is connecting resources and opportunities. So for us, collaboration means, you know, having subject matter experts that are not necessarily a part of our organization, but that we can connect our community to. So I think that was really an important like step for me to kind of, you know, as we move forward, we're building on our values as we're looking at our new strategic plan as well.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think what that highlights, Tanya, is that when you're small, you can all sort of come up with the shared meaning a lot easier. And as you grow and as it expands out, you're adding all these other people who think of this word. And so I do think that that's a really key point. So thanks for bringing that back around. I do want to, I'm cognizant that we have 15 minutes left. And so I want to go spend just a little bit of time on how do you recruit? And it's not, again, this is not like you're all going to go out and become like, you know, recruiters, but this is just some things to think about. And when I say recruiting, there's a lot of different people and types of people you're recruiting. You're recruiting full-time employees sometimes. Sometimes you're recruiting temporary employees or a contractor. Sometimes you're recruiting an investor. Sometimes you're recruiting somebody who's just going to help you for a minute and they're just an advisor, right, for something. So I don't want us to be, especially in this group, locked into this idea that recruiting is the traditional, like you're going to go hire someone and give them an offer letter. But I do think that there are some principles about that are important to talk about. And so, you know, we've done all this talk about setting yourself up to be ready to know how to build your team, right? Mission, vision, values. Well, when it's time to bring someone in to that. And, you know, John, I think it was you who was talking about this, like, even that is a scary idea, right? Opening yourself up to trust someone else. That highlights how important this is to work on, because just sort of choosing someone isn't, it can be very dangerous and very costly and time consuming and emotionally consuming, right? So I want to just give you a few principles to think about, because where you are in your journey, this may not apply to you right away, but just think about these principles in a broad sense of recruiting. So when I talk about posting, what I'm really talking about is expressing what you're asking for, expressing what you're looking for. And I want us to think about this in terms of like, have you ever gone into a situation where you're looking for a particular thing, you haven't defined what that thing is? So if I'm thinking about a car or a wedding dress or your own job or a piece of furniture, right? If you're going to look for this thing, if you don't have much of a sense of what you're looking for, you're potentially going to choose something that's frustrating and not a good fit, right? And so if you think about that in a very simplistic way in terms of a car, right? So I know I don't want a pickup truck. I know I want a minivan. So I walk into a place that's only selling pickup trucks. Well, that's not going to be helpful. So where are you expressing your need for this thing? Where are you posting your job or the thing that you're asking someone to join you? And then what language are you putting in there? Are you including that values language, right? And so in this very simple example that I'm talking about, this metaphor of a car, right? So let's say I know that I want four-wheel drive, SUV, heated seats. If I know that that's what's important to me, and I walk into the car dealership and I say, I want a car that can get me to point A to point B, I haven't told them anything about what I actually value about the thing I want. And so I could get something that could take me to point A to point B, but it's not going to include the values that I have, right? And so think about that when you're thinking about recruiting. Again, whatever you're recruiting, are you including that values language? Because that right there, you're telling people what's important and what's important to the organization and what they're opting into. And it's a two-way street, this recruiting thing, right? Like people are evaluating on both sides. Does that make sense? I also want to talk to you a little bit about interviewing, because one of the things that often happens is how you sort of express or ask a question. And so I'm just going to give you a really quick example and a really quick tip. So I talk about behavioral interviewing, and this applies whether you're looking at full-time employees or others, right? Where you are not sort of where you're creating a situation where you're making someone show you what they've done instead of tell you what they might do in a situation or are capable of doing in a situation. So I'm going to make something up. So let's say one of your values is integrity. You could go ask someone, tell me about a time where you've shown integrity. May or may not really tell you much about that person. Instead, what you may want to ask is, hey, tell me about a time when somebody asked you to do something that you thought wasn't the best for the customer and wasn't a genuine representation of what your business was. How did you handle that? Who'd you talk to? What was the result? That is going to show you what someone thinks about their integrity, how they actually handled themselves in a situation. And as they talk to you, they're going to reflect a little bit about what they did or didn't do in that situation. And it gives you a much better picture of what someone's capable of. So, John, I'm thinking about that thing about trust, right? And so this is where you start to actually know what somebody's saying and doing versus anybody can tell you how to be, well, maybe not anyone. Most people can tell you how to be full of integrity in a situation. But if you wipe that out and you just make them show you, you can start to just be more confident. It's never going to be 100%. It's always a risk. Bringing someone else into the business is a risk. But you can set yourself up to know more. I had a leader one time say to me, if you go into an interview uninformed and unprepared, that's how you're going to come out, uninformed and unprepared. So be ready with those kinds of things, right? Recruit for what you need. It can be a hazard. It can be a trap to think, I'm really good, so I'm going to recruit for another me. We all know that, like, when we're around people who are just like us, we sort of end up hating that person because you start to see the things in them, right, that you don't like about you. That's one thing. But the other thing is, you don't need another you. You're bringing your magic. So pick someone that's got magic you don't have, right? So if you know that you're really good at details, or I'm going to go the other way. Let's say you know you're really good at pitching to somebody, but like the conversation's great, but you're 10 minutes late and you probably forgot your presentation back at the office. Well, you need someone who's going to be better at that, right? Who's going to keep you on your toes with that. And that's, again, a very simplistic example, but think that way. Think about, what is it that I don't have that I need? And please don't settle. It can be very, very tempting because you're in a time crunch, or it's embarrassing to go back and ask someone for a second interview because you're just not quite sure. Like, don't settle, because I'm promising you that, to Jonna's point, like, you bring in somebody who isn't the right fit, you're spending more time and more money and more pain than it would have taken you to wait another month to find someone. Does that make sense? And then involve trusted people in your business or your network in the process. You don't have to make the decision by yourself. And if you're an individual that doesn't have a whole team yet, think about, who are those people who've helped you along the way that you value their opinion. What I always ask for when I'm asking folks in my own organization who they want on an interview team, I say, who is it that helps you make good decisions? Whose input do you value? Who helps you see things that you didn't see? Because that's who you want to interview, because you're going to know what you're good at looking for. And you're going to know, you know what, that person, they really help me see things differently, and I want their perspective. And then who's going to be working closely with this individual? That may seem obvious in a small team. The bigger you get, you can start to want everybody to have to weigh in, right? So who's going to be working closely, and who gives you good ideas and good perspective?
Kristy, that is so important what you're saying, because if most people are anything like me, and I love everybody, and I don't like to tell people, no, or don't figure that it's a good fit. So I have two board members. One has been in HR for 20 years. And then the other is an entrepreneur and is a therapist now. So I trust Kelly and Toya to do the hiring more than me, because they both know me and know what we need. And so I think that you make a valuable point that, engage people that you trust to help you make good decisions.
Yep, exactly. I think especially for those of us who are builders, sometimes we think we have to build it all by ourselves. Yep. Especially because it's the thing that we really care about.
Yeah. This is our baby. This is your baby.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and if I could echo Tanya, excellent point, because while you were talking, I was like, oh my God, I don't have to do that. I have somebody that can do that. Now I'm relieved. So yes, excellent. Yes.
I'm so glad.
So
It's
true.
fun. Yeah, go ahead, Jonna.
I feel like when I'm saying trust, I feel like I have good judgment of character when I'm meeting people, but I'm trying to navigate a space that I'm not familiar with, or this is my first time. So I do need my mentors. That I do have a mentor. I have people in this space who understand it. I'm studying this space. I'm excited about it. But as far as building an app, I've never done that before. I don't know what I'm asking for. I don't know the industry, and I don't have anyone necessarily. Basically, every interview, I'm going by their vibes on whether I trust what they're saying or not. And I feel like tech moves very fast, and it's happening very fast. And I want to build it, but I'm not doing what I need to do out of fear that somebody is going to steal, a bigger guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I'm battling, it's hard alone. That's what I will say. So yeah.
So Jonna, I wonder,
it's very hard.
Tell me if this makes sense. I wonder, in this situation that you described, where you don't have someone else who can sit with you and do the interviews, but you're trusting someone else's technical representation, right, of their technical knowledge. Is there someone that you can at least have help you form questions and know what to look for? Who'll sit with you once and say, here's some important questions to ask. and here's some important answers to listen for, so that even if they can't go be in the interview with you, it can help you feel maybe more equipped.
I have a friend who actually built his prototype. He went overseas to build his. So I'll get a list together for him. But I'm a visual person, so I know what it's supposed to look like and this, that, and the third. But when it comes to what is required in the background, I don't know if someone's trying to get me on the price, or if it like, I just want to take a run for it. To like, I want to do this. So yeah.
If I may chime in,
you're in a safe space here in our community, and we're certainly here to support you beyond OnRamp. So keep that in mind. We got you.
Thank you. Seriously.
The one thing I would chime in, because I totally understand, Jonna, what you're saying. I can definitely relate. And especially when something like tech can get sometimes intimidating, right? So you kind of maybe don't necessarily trust yourself. But I would advise and suggest, because like I recently had a similar experience when it comes to who you're trusting and partnering with. I realized I was intimidated because I didn't know the space, and I was trusting what I perceived to be experts too much. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't make sense to you, like just let common sense be a driver. If it doesn't make sense, it's probably not right. It's either they're doing something wrong in the space, or that person is obviously trying to mislead you. So that was a very expensive mistake for me, but I've learned that ultimately common sense is common sense wherever, and it's your idea, and they're validating to some extent the idea, right? If they're trying to mislead you, or like you're concerned, trying to steal the idea or going to steal the idea, right? So
that's what I don't want to happen. Like that's
exactly. Yeah, you just have to trust your instinct.
Exactly.
I would say trust your. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whatever kind of big words. If it doesn't make sense, that's what I like. I've realized if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
It's kind of the same thing if it sounds too good to be true.
It probably is, right?
I'm very aware that it's 1 minute before 6. Tanya, Angela, is there anything else that you want me to leave space for? Or this was my last slide, but I also want to open up for anybody else who might want to share or ask.
I don't have anything else. Let's thank Kristy. I think this was excellent. Really got me thinking. I hope it got you all thinking about your culture and building your team and your values and leading with your values when you're hiring and looking for the right person. So